In the world of professional wrestling, Vince McMahon stands as the ultimate symbol of power, a man capable of turning an unknown name into a global superstar overnight. But that power has often come with controversy, especially when it comes to his treatment of female wrestlers. Behind the spotlight, many women have faced injustice, disrespect, and in some cases, blatant mistreatment. Today, Wrestling Sphere dives into the stories of female wrestlers who openly despised working with Vince McMahon, revealing sides of the business that have rarely been fully told. Ronda Rousey, the woman who dared to expose Vince McMahon's dark side. In WWE, very few have ever dared to publicly criticize Vince McMahon, a towering figure of authority who once ruled an entire empire. But Ronda Rousey is not like the rest. The former women's champion and UFC legend has always been known for her fierce personality and uncompromising stance. In her newly released memoir, Our Fight, April, Ronda made headlines by boldly calling out the dark truths behind the scenes of WWE, especially the behavior of Vince McMahon himself. During a promotional interview for the book, Ronda didn't just share her own experience. She gave voice to countless women who stayed silent out of fear or coercion. According to her, WWE was a toxic environment filled with injustice, gender discrimination, and a deeply unhealthy culture, with Vince McMahon at the heart of the storm. In the book, Ronda didn't hold back. She used powerful language to describe the real Vince McMahon, saying that not only did he engage in questionable behavior in real life, but he also brought that behavior onto WWE programming, blurring the lines between character and reality. What angered her the most was how those actions were normalized for so long, to the point where no one dared to speak up for fear of retaliation or being cast out of WWE's glamorous spotlight. Ronda revealed that during her time in WWE, she witnessed how the company prioritized looks over talent when it came to female wrestlers. To her, that was an insult to the women who shed blood, sweat, and tears to earn their place in the industry. She claimed WWE once treated its female talent like decorations on TV, merely there to support the male stars. Things only began to shift when public outrage took hold on social media, especially through the hashtag #GiveDivasAChance movement. That was the turning point when fans demanded WWE give its women more time, more respect, and more opportunities to showcase their actual abilities. Ronda became one of the most vocal figures in that push for change and equality in professional wrestling. Despite her criticism of Vince McMahon, Ronda had kind words for his daughter, Stephanie McMahon. She called Stephanie a true friend, a woman who understood the value of fairness and respect, and someone who genuinely tried, even if not always successfully, to challenge WWE's male-dominated culture. Still, that praise wasn't enough to soften Ronda's scathing indictment of her former company. She recounted the dark days when female wrestlers were objectified in degrading matches like bra and panties contests, where the goal wasn't to win through skill, but to be stripped down on live television. To Ronda, those segments weren't just tasteless, they were a blatant insult to the worth and dignity of women. Shockingly, in her memoir, Ronda even referenced the term casting couch culture, implying that such a system existed within WWE for years, where powerful men used their positions to exploit and manipulate women, demanding sexual favors in exchange for airtime or main event spots. These weren't subtle suggestions. They were direct accusations, striking at the carefully constructed image Vince McMahon had long tried to uphold. Ronda also honored the trailblazing women who came before her, those who broke barriers and paved the way for future generations to be treated like real athletes. She expressed deep gratitude, saying that without them, there would never have been a Ronda Rousey in WWE. But that appreciation did not mean forgiveness for the pain those women, and she herself, had to endure. To Ronda Rousey, Vince McMahon wasn't just a former boss. He symbolized an era where women were belittled, mistreated, and reduced to cheap entertainment. For her, speaking out isn't rebellion, it's responsibility. The responsibility to tell the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. And in her eyes, Vince McMahon is someone who never earned her respect, and never will. Ashley Massaro, the tragedy of a warrior crushed by power. Ashley Massaro entered WWE like a breath of fresh air, radiant beauty, sharp charisma, and a resilient spirit. After winning the 2005 Raw Divas search, she quickly became a fan favorite and a rising star within the company. But behind the spotlight and the cheers, Ashley endured a series of humiliating and heartbreaking events, at the hands of none other than WWE's top boss, Vince McMahon. In April 2007, Ashley appeared on the cover of Playboy, reaching the peak of her fame. What seemed like a career milestone, however, turned out to be the beginning of a nightmare. In testimony revealed by attorneys Constantine Kairos and Erica Mirabella, who represented Ashley in a class action lawsuit involving brain injuries, she shared disturbing details of what followed once her star began to rise. Ashley claimed that prior to her Playboy feature, Vince McMahon barely noticed her. While he would freely flirt with and kiss other female wrestlers in the locker room, he showed little interest in Ashley, a fact she once considered a blessing. But everything changed after she became the face of one of the world's most provocative magazines. With increased exposure came special privileges, access to the company's private jet and hotel accommodations near WWE executives, allowing her to return home quickly to care for her daughter. But one night, those perks became a source of fear. Vince McMahon repeatedly tried to isolate her late at night, calling both her hotel room and personal phone non-stop. Ashley was terrified. Desperate, she reached out to Kevin Dunn, WWE's executive producer at the time, for help. He advised her to claim she wasn't feeling well and declined the meeting with Vince. She followed his advice, unaware that this choice would mark the beginning of her career's unraveling. Shortly after, Vince began personally rewriting her promos, a first for her. This wasn't just unusual, it was a clear sign that he was trying to control her public image. The scripts were bizarre, degrading, and appeared deliberately designed to damage her credibility with the audience. Ashley brought one of these scripts to Michael Hayes, who oversaw creative direction at the time, asking for guidance. His reaction was telling, "You're not saying this. Who wrote this?" When she told him it was from Vince, he simply said, "Well, kid, that's life." A short sentence loaded with resignation, an unspoken truth that no one in WWE dared to go against Vince McMahon. Ashley believed Vince had intentionally sabotaged her career after she resisted his advances. She recalled how, from that night on, he would whisper crude, sexually explicit remarks whenever he passed her backstage, punishing her for defying his authority. But the tragedy didn't end there. After Ashley passed away in 2019 at the age of 39, parts of her sworn statement surfaced, revealing a deeper pain. During a 2006 WWE tour in Kuwait, Ashley alleged she was sexually assaulted by a man claiming to be a military doctor. Even more disturbing was her claim that she reported the incident to Vince McMahon and several high-ranking WWE officials, only to be told to stay silent and never speak of it. Ashley said John Laurinaitis, WWE's head of talent relations at the time, was fully aware of the situation. His lawyer later confirmed that most top executives had been informed. Yet none of them took her side. No one defended her. Instead, they covered it up, silencing the victim. Ashley Massaro's story isn't just a personal tragedy. It's a stark indictment of a corrupt system where power is used to silence pain and protect reputations. Even in death, Ashley's voice continues to echo, a warning about the cruelty that can hide behind the glitz and glamour. And in that grim reality, Vince McMahon doesn't emerge as a leader, but as the face of unchecked power and the suffering it inflicted on women like Ashley, who were forced to endure it in silence for far too long. AJ Lee, the petite powerhouse with a loud voice and a lingering rift with Vince McMahon. Throughout her time in WWE, AJ Lee wasn't just one of the most beloved female wrestlers. She was a force that redefined how women were seen in professional wrestling. Despite her petite frame, she captivated audiences with her fierce personality, magnetic promos, and emotionally charged in-ring style. But behind the spotlight, her journey within WWE was far from the fairy tale fans imagined. One of the biggest sources of tension between AJ and WWE leadership, especially Vince McMahon, stemmed from her relationship with CM Punk. At the time of their marriage, Punk had become a pariah in WWE after publicly criticizing the company and Vince himself. And while AJ tried to keep her career separate, the shadow of Punk and his strained relationship with Vince cast a long and unfair pall over her time in WWE. From there, cracks began to form. AJ was never afraid to speak the truth, even when it meant becoming a thorn in management's side. She shocked the wrestling world when she openly called out Stephanie McMahon on social media for the clear disparity between men and women in terms of screen time, pay, and opportunities. Though her words were directed at Stephanie, everyone knew who was truly responsible for those policies. Vince McMahon, the architect of WWE's long-standing power structure and company culture. After leaving WWE, AJ rarely spoke about her time there. She made no returns, didn't appear in anniversary specials, and virtually erased WWE from her public narrative. To fans, AJ Lee remains a symbol of a pivotal era of change, but to her, WWE, and particularly Vince McMahon, seems to be little more than a scarred memory from the past. Dawn Marie, betrayed when she needed help most, and the disappointment she never forgot. Dawn Marie was once a standout name in ECW, where she began her career managing talents like Lance Storm and Justin Credible. She brought charm, wit, and a sly sense of seduction to backstage segments. But when ECW folded in 2001 and WWE absorbed the brand, her new home proved far less welcoming than she'd hoped. From the start, Dawn realized her talents weren't being recognized. Instead of nurturing her creatively, WWE placed her in shallow, gimmick-heavy storylines. One such angle involved an awkward on-screen romance with Vince McMahon himself, an uncomfortable storyline for fans and one she herself reportedly disliked. Things escalated when WWE cast her in a bizarre wedding storyline with Al Wilson, Tori Wilson's real-life father, an elderly man with zero wrestling experience. The angle was widely criticized for being absurd and offensive, both to women and to older individuals. But what truly drove Dawn Marie to turn her back on WWE was something far crueler. While pregnant, at a time when she should have been cared for and supported, WWE abruptly released her. No warning. No medical assistance. No financial aid. A decision that was not only unethical, but also a serious violation of labor rights. Dawn later filed a lawsuit against WWE, which was eventually settled out of court. While the settlement amount was never disclosed, her legal action sent a clear message. She would not stay silent in the face of injustice. When asked if she'd ever consider returning to WWE, Dawn chuckled and said, "Never say never," only to quickly admit that, realistically, it was never going to happen. To Dawn Marie, Vince McMahon and WWE weren't a family or a safe haven. They were a machine that used her, discarded her, and left lasting wounds, professionally and personally. Gail Kim, the woman who spoke out against Vince McMahon and WWE's injustice. Gail Kim has never hidden her frustration with Vince McMahon. To her, her time in WWE wasn't something to be proud of, it was an experience she would rather forget. Despite joining the company twice, Gail constantly felt overlooked and sidelined, not just because she was a woman, but because of her race. She openly accused Vince McMahon of harboring racist attitudes. As a Korean American, she claimed she was never given the same opportunities as other female wrestlers. Her storylines were superficial, her screen time minimal, and her incredible in-ring skills were rarely showcased, despite her being one of the most technically gifted wrestlers of her era. When WWE later launched its highly publicized Women's Evolution, Gail Kim didn't buy into the hype. To her, figures like Stephanie McMahon couldn't take credit for something that Vince McMahon himself had deliberately suppressed for years. Gail revealed that any time she or someone else proposed a serious match for women, Vince would shut it down, because in his eyes, women didn't need to wrestle well, they just needed to look good. Despite leaving WWE on a sour note, Gail acknowledged one person from the company, Triple H. She said that in their final conversation before her departure, he expressed understanding and regret that he couldn't help push WWE in the direction she hoped for. Though he didn't say it outright, Gail understood that Vince McMahon was the biggest obstacle. Today, Gail Kim is seen as a legend, not because WWE handed her that label, but because she had the courage to speak up, challenge injustice, and help pave the way for future generations of female wrestlers to earn the respect they deserve. Ivory, a warrior out of place in Vince McMahon's bikini era. A three-time women's champion and WWE Hall of Famer, Ivory has long been one of the most vocal critics of how Vince McMahon treated women's wrestling. She never held back her disappointment over WWE's decision to prioritize hiring attractive women, often models and actresses, over trained wrestlers with real talent. For Ivory, it wasn't just unprofessional, it was a betrayal of the craft. She admitted that most of her career took place during an era where women's matches revolved around bikinis, miniskirts, and bra and panties contests. Yet, even in that over-sexualized environment, she and a few others stayed true to what mattered most, wrestling. They delivered clean holds, passionate performances, and treated the sport with the respect it deserved. However, shortly after Ivory left WWE, the company launched its infamous Diva Search competitions, where looks mattered more than anything else. According to her, that was when Vince McMahon officially drove women's wrestling into its darkest period. Most of the women hired during that time knew little about wrestling and seemed to be there simply for show. Ivory spoke out not just as a veteran wrestler, but as a woman who had poured her heart into the industry. She felt pushed to the sidelines, watching as technical skill was devalued and appearance took center stage. While she acknowledged that WWE has made real progress in recent years, offering more opportunities to women, the bitterness still lingers. Looking back, she sees a time when Vince McMahon chose beauty over ability, and in doing so, pushed wrestlers like her out of the spotlight. Shelly Martinez, from seductive vampire to outspoken critic of Vince McMahon. Let's be honest, unless you're a hardcore fan of ECW or TNA, you probably don't know who Shelly Martinez is. And that's not surprising. Martinez had a brief and mostly forgettable run in WWE under the name Ariel, a mysterious, tarot-reading vampire and girlfriend of Kevin Thorne during the short-lived ECW revival. Despite the unique character design, the role did little to boost Martinez's career. Less than a year after her debut, WWE quietly released her. Though she once blamed Batista for indirectly causing her firing, what truly drew attention was her shocking public accusations against Vince McMahon. Shortly after retiring in 2017, Shelly sent shockwaves through the wrestling community with a controversial tweet. She alleged that Vince McMahon pressured female wrestlers into sleeping with him to get more TV time. It was a serious accusation, one that echoed long-standing rumors within the wrestling world. While Shelly never provided concrete evidence, she didn't hold back in expressing her disgust and anger at having worked under Vince. In interviews that followed, Martinez repeatedly voiced her dissatisfaction with WWE and Vince McMahon. To her, her time with the company was filled with pressure, injustice, and emotional harm. She felt she was never respected as a true artist or wrestler. In her eyes, Vince symbolized a rotten system where women had to compromise their dignity just to stay in the spotlight. For Shelly Martinez, WWE wasn't a launchpad for her career. It was a nightmare dressed up in makeup and flashing lights. Rita Chatterton, the forgotten pioneer erased from WWE history. In wrestling, referees are meant to be invisible, so much so that fans often forget they're even there. And no one embodied that better than Rita Chatterton, also known as Rita Marie, the first female referee in WWE history. Though she broke ground and helped pave the way for future women in the role, her name has largely vanished from WWE's record books. And if you're wondering why, the answer may lie with Vince McMahon. Rita worked for WWE for only a short period in the mid-1980s. The company later claimed she lacked the skills to continue officiating. But according to Rita, the real story was far more disturbing. She accused Vince McMahon of removing her from the company after she refused his inappropriate advances. With no hard proof or witnesses, her voice was quickly silenced in an industry where women who spoke out were rarely heard. Rita tried to expose the situation in a bombshell interview in the late 1980s. But at the time, the public was reluctant to believe accusations against powerful, wealthy men. She was labeled a fame seeker or attention-hungry. The case never went to trial, and her name was effectively erased from WWE history, as if she had never existed. But times have changed. In recent years, new allegations against Vince McMahon have brought renewed attention to Rita's story. Today, people view her claims through a different lens. Whether her accusations are proven or not, one thing is clear: Rita Chatterton carries a deep resentment toward Vince McMahon. And perhaps, she has every reason to feel that way. Sable, the sex symbol who silently rebelled against Vince McMahon. Sable wasn't just a beauty icon. She was one of the most recognizable figures during WWE's golden era. With her bombshell looks and undeniable charisma, she quickly became the center of attention on Raw, pay-per-views, and countless WWE promotions. The company made millions off her image: posters, DVDs, magazines, TV appearances. But behind the glitz and fame was a much darker truth. Sable never felt truly comfortable working under Vince McMahon. The clearest sign of that discomfort came in 1999, when she filed a lawsuit against WWE demanding $110 million in damages, citing sexual harassment and a toxic work environment. It wasn't a rash decision. It was the breaking point of someone who had endured mistreatment, disrespect, and exploitation for far too long in a company she had helped bring to new heights. Ironically, while her husband Brock Lesnar has long been one of Vince McMahon's favorite stars, Sable has been completely absent from WWE since 2004. Even when Lesnar returned in 2012 and went on to dominate WWE for over a decade, Sable never made a single on-screen appearance. That silence wasn't accidental. It reflected the deep fracture in her relationship with Vince. Beyond the legal battle, Sable's backstage experience was far from glamorous. One infamous incident involved X-Pac, a male wrestler, defecating in her bag as a so-called prank. Vince wasn't directly involved, but his failure to punish such a disgusting act left Sable feeling deeply humiliated. A respectful workplace wouldn't tolerate something like that, let alone ignore it. Since leaving WWE, Sable has all but vanished from the spotlight. She lives a private life, far removed from wrestling, and rarely, if ever, mentions her time as one of WWE's top stars. No interviews, no reunion specials, no Hall of Fame tributes. She's erased that chapter from her story, and with everything she endured, it's hard to blame her. Janelle Grant, the nightmare Vince McMahon can't escape. Among all those who have stood up to Vince McMahon, none have shaken the industry quite like Janelle Grant. A former WWE employee, Janelle filed a bombshell lawsuit accusing Vince of one of the most serious crimes imaginable: sex trafficking. Her case wasn't just a personal grievance, it sent shockwaves through WWE's inner circle and beyond. According to the lawsuit, Vince McMahon lured Janelle with promises of career advancement, eventually coercing her into a non-consensual sexual relationship. Even more disturbing, Vince allegedly shared explicit photos and videos of her with other individuals within WWE, causing deep emotional and psychological trauma. But it didn't stop with Vince. John Laurinaitis, WWE's former head of talent relations, was also named in the lawsuit. Janelle claimed he not only knew what was happening but actively participated in the abusive system, one built on power, manipulation, and exploitation. While rumors about Vince's misconduct had swirled for years, few ever imagined things could escalate this far. Janelle's lawsuit forced WWE to launch an internal investigation and ultimately led to Vince McMahon resigning from the company, something many believed would only happen if he left the world entirely. Though the case is still in progress, Janelle Grant's bravery in speaking out has already made her a symbol of strength. She shattered the silence that protected WWE's darkest secrets, and in doing so, ensured her name would be forever remembered as one of the few who made Vince McMahon finally bow his head. Maria Kanellis, a voice that refuses to stay silent. In the wake of Vince McMahon's resignation amidst serious allegations, Maria Kanellis was one of the first to speak out, without flinching from the truth. While Vince continues to deny accusations of trafficking, sexual misconduct, and abuse of power, Maria made it clear, the silence has gone on long enough. On social media, Maria shared a raw and honest message, reflecting not just her personal frustration, but speaking on behalf of many women who had once worked within WWE. She stated plainly that for years, people tried to expose and change the toxic backstage culture, but their efforts were ignored, discredited, or worse, smeared. "We were called bitter, crazy," Maria wrote. "Some were too scared to say anything at all." Her words, though brief, cut deep, capturing what it feels like to be silenced in a system built on unchecked power. But Maria didn't just speak for herself. She extended her thoughts to all survivors, those who found the courage to come forward, those who never had the chance, and those who are no longer here to tell their stories. For her, justice isn't just a legal outcome, it's the peace that survivors deserve. Once known in WWE as a glamorous diva, Maria Kanellis has shown she's far more than a pretty face. She's a powerful voice against silence, and a reminder that once the light hits the truth, no one, not even Vince McMahon, can hide forever. Lita, a legend who was pushed too far. Among the many women who've clashed with Vince McMahon, few stories hit as hard as Lita's. A trailblazer, Hall of Famer, and respected figure in wrestling history, Lita's legacy is celebrated by fans and peers alike. But behind the curtain, she was forced into one of the most humiliating moments of her career, and it all traced back to Vince. In a candid Twitch livestream, Lita revealed she never agreed to participate in the infamous live sex celebration with Edge on Raw in 2006. She firmly refused. But instead of support, she was met with a threat: comply or be fired. Even Edge and John Cena reportedly tried to talk Vince out of it, but he refused to change the script. The segment, which had Lita and Edge undress on a bed in the middle of the ring, led to a wardrobe malfunction broadcast live to millions. It was not just embarrassing. It was demeaning. a memory she's tried to forget ever since. Soon after, Lita left WWE and was treated with stunning disrespect during her final appearance. The comedy duo Crime Time was ordered to auction off her underwear and personal belongings live on air, as one last degrading gesture from the company. Though the sex celebration may have spiked ratings, the truth behind it left fans with a bitter aftertaste. It wasn't funny. It was a stark reminder of the cruel power Vince McMahon once wielded, and how he used it to dominate those who dared to say no. China, the ninth wonder of the world, and an unforgivable injustice. If there's one woman who completely changed the world's perception of female wrestlers, it was China. Powerful, captivating, and fearless, she shattered boundaries as the first woman to compete in the Royal Rumble, face off against male opponents, and hold the Intercontinental Championship. Yet despite her trailblazing accomplishments, China was never treated fairly by Vince McMahon and WWE leadership. After her breakup with Triple H, her longtime partner and rising WWE star, China was unceremoniously pushed out of the company, as if she had never existed. Many believe Vince sided with Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, who would go on to marry Triple H, effectively ousting China to protect the McMahon family's public image. From being one of WWE's biggest female stars, she suddenly vanished from programming, with no farewell, no tribute, no closure. Even more heartbreaking, after leaving WWE, China expressed her desire to return, if only briefly, to thank her fans. But Vince McMahon completely ignored her. In an interview, Triple H once claimed that China's post-WWE adult film career made her inappropriate for a family-friendly product, an excuse widely slammed as hypocritical, especially coming from a company that heavily sexualized its female talent for years. China passed away in 2016. It wasn't until years later that WWE finally inducted her into the Hall of Fame, but only as part of D-Generation X, not as an individual. For many fans, this felt too little, too late, and far beneath what her legacy truly deserved. If anyone had a reason to resent Vince McMahon, it was undoubtedly China. And those were the female superstars who once said no to Vince McMahon's authoritarian power. Who do you think had the most heartbreaking story? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video from Wrestling Sphere.